Hi, beautiful artists. Today I wanted to play with these little light pink, kind of blush pink rose buds. I thought they were just so pretty, and so I thought we'd play with those today. Let me just go through my supplies really quickly. I'm using my Dugato today. I actually also have this fun little MEEDEN brush, which I've been enjoying. It's got a really fine point, very snappy, but I think I will go ahead and use my Dugatos. As you know, these are such a great starter brush set. If you are a beginner, you get a whole set of 10 for like $10, and it lets you kind of experiment and play with all these different sizes. So I will be using their number, let's see, I've used this so much it's wearing off. This is their number 4, and I really am still quite shocked how well they have kept their point. So those Dugatos, great student if you don't want to invest in those Princeton brushes. And then of course I'll be using my Artisto pad. You know, I love these. They're not 100% cotton, but they're such a great little journal book that I keep all of my paintings in, and I can refer back to them. I label them. They've got beautiful texture. So I'll be using that paper today. And then my MeiLang paints. I'm still using my larger set with these beautiful little metallics. I refer to them more as iridescent because they're quite transparent and not quite as bright as some of the metallics. So I'll be using that today, and I've got my 2 containers of water, one to wash, one to rinse, that beautiful little MEEDEN ceramic well. And let's go ahead and get started. So this is very much going to be a wet and wet technique. I will start with a little bit of wet on dry, and then what I'll do is one of my favorite ways to go around my painting is to lay down a wet in dry and then go around it with a damp brush and just kind of soften the edges, get some of the paint to flow a little bit. And I just think for these flowers, my vision with this pastel pink, it was just so pretty to make it very subtle and flowy. One of the things, as you know, I just love about watercolors. So let's go into, I'm going to use the lighter pink here. And, you know, I thought I might stop using these as much after Christmas, but I'm really still enjoying them. One thing I will mention is the iridescents I found for me sometimes don't flow quite as much as the regular watercolors. That's just my experience with them, but they're so beautiful, and we're going to work with that. So I'm going to go in with my first bud. I really don't like putting it right smack in the center, so I'm going to go just a little bit off to the side and lay down some shapes here. I'm using a lot of the tip of my brush, so light pressure here, like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and wash and rinse my brush, and now I will start going in and just softening some of these little edges here, like so, and creating this kind of fat bud. Now before this dries, I definitely want to go in and use I'm going to use my olive green. That's kind of my go-to color, and I think it's really pretty with the pink. And I have about a mixture of 50-50, 50 paint, 50 water, and then just tapping off. And I'm going to lay that in here. I think this color is so beautiful with the pink. I'm also going to use the tip of this brush, light pressure, resting my hand on my pad here, and just the lightest pressure, I'm going to bring that stem down. Now I don't want to go too long here before I go up and work some darker pinks into this before it dries too much. So I'm using their other pink here that's a little bit brighter, and just going to lay in. Now, as you can see there, it's not quite, the metallics I feel like dry a little bit quicker. So what I'll do is after I lay that in, I'm going to go in and just soften some of those edges like that. Maybe go in there again. But look at how beautiful that green and that pink is. So that one's about done. I'm going to leave it as is. Now, if you notice too, I left some white space in here. Really important, because otherwise it would just look like a big ball of color. So I was very careful to make sure I did that. The other thing I want to do is just go in with a little bit more of that olive green and touch in to some of that wet paint, so I get a little bit of a variation of those greens in here. Wash and rinse my brush, just barely tap it off, and then let's just add some water here. Again, I love the soft edges, so that's kind of my washy type of style. Just me, and then I want to maybe soften some of these edges with just a damp brush. And there you go. Let's go on to the next little bud here. So we're going to use that same type of approach, and I'm just going to create a little bit smaller bud. For composition, rule of odds, I typically will do things in groups of 3, so that's what I'm going to do here. And I'm going to start with that same bud type shape, but I want to make it a little bit smaller. Notice the white space that I'm leaving in there as well. And then wash and rinse my brush, tap it off, and start going in there and just adding some water. So I didn't add as much water in the center, because the tighter the center, the more color there's going to be. And then I'll go in with that little bit of darker pink, which is also an iridescent, and just kind of tap in, letting that blend. And I think that's enough. I'm going to go in now, wash and rinse my brush with the green while that's wet, so it can blend with the pink. And then just using the tip of my brush, go in and draw this little stem, and there we go. So pretty. I love it. Now I can go in and just maybe tap in some of that darker green. Here I'm just adding a few darker detail lines. And if we want, we can kind of add some washiness here to kind of look like maybe some leaves in the background, something like that. Okay, and then we'll add our last bud right up here. And I'm trying to work with the composition a little bit. So I've got my main focal point right here, which has an opening, so it's kind of leading your eye up. And then I've got this one that's a little bit smaller, and it's kind of leading our eye around. So our eye comes up here, out the side. Now this one I will make come kind of up to this direction, okay? Let's just grab some of that light pink again. I'm gonna add a little bit of water. So it's probably about 75 paint 25% water, tapping off on the side. You can also tap off on a paper towel. And let's just create our last little bunch here, our last little bud here. And this one I'm going to try and make just a tiny bit smaller. So we have some different kind of styles. There we go. So that one's quite small. Let me go in with that darker pink before that dries too much. And just tap in here and there. Again, I left some white space. And then with the green, so wash and rinse my brush and dab it off. Go back into that green. Now you can use whatever green you like. I really like the olive green because it feels really warm and a nice contrast to that beautiful, cool, light pink. And trying to go in here before that dried too much. And then just create our stem. So look at how beautiful and light and just very subtle, almost ethereal here. I'm just taking a damp brush and creating a very light wash around this. Now you could go in and add just a tiny bit darker value of that pink here and there. I think actually I'm using the metallic in this set, but I've got a little bit, I think, of Quin Magenta in my palette. But I really want to keep it subtle. So that's a little hard line. So what I'll do is wash and rinse my brush and go in and just lighten that up a bit. Just the tip of my brush, I'll add in just a tiny bit of darkest in that back. Maybe like we did here. Something like that. So I think that's just such an easy, just subtle little bouquet. We could add some more leaves in here, but I don't even think it's necessary. I think this is just beautiful as it is. So I'm going to leave that just like that. And I hope you guys will give this a try. Remember the techniques we used here. I used wet and dry first, wet on dry paper. And then I went in with a damp brush, no paint on my brush, and kind of softened edges. And really important to leave these white spaces in here. All right. And I hope you have a good time with this. I will list all of my supplies. And happy painting, friends. I'll see you soon.